Hey there, welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. My name is Chase Senior, and as always, no matter where you are or how you're tuned in, I appreciate you for making today's show a part of your day. Let's talk some Eagles here. Coming up on the show, Eagles make a couple of roster moves on the final day of training camp. We have a ton of Eagles injury news to touch on as the Birds are 15 days away from hosting the Dallas Cowboys in Week 1 at Lincoln Financial Field to kick off the 2025 NFL season. And I'm going to do another training camp reaction. What happened during the final day of training camp as Jalen Hurts in particular was on fire. Before we do all of that and dive into those topics, I'm always talking Eagles here on Eagles Now, reaching millions of people every single month. But on my social media pages, give me a follow for additional Eagles coverage because I'm also reaching millions of people over there. And it's the same handle on both platforms. You can find me on X at Chase_Senior, approaching 17,000 followers, and on Instagram, an even bigger platform at Chase_Senior, closing in on 40,000 followers there. As for some Philadelphia Eagles roster moves, the Eagles this morning announcing the signing of linebacker Chance Campbell, the corresponding roster move for the Birds releasing wide receiver Gyles Jackson, the speedster out of Washington who can run in the 4.3-4.4s. Of note here, Chance Campbell played under Eagles inside linebackers coach Bobby King with the Tennessee Titans. Campbell, more on him. He's 6'2", 232 pounds. He was a 2022 sixth-round pick by Tennessee. He played his college football at Maryland, then his final year at Ole Miss, where he had really impressive production. He was with Tennessee from 2022 through 2024 after being selected in the sixth round. He moves pretty well vertically for that size of 232 pounds. Clocked a 4.57 40-yard dash in the pre-draft process coming out of Ole Miss. He's only played 4 games in his NFL career, all of them coming during the 2023 campaign. But as we know, the Eagles really like players who are gifted athletes and who score well on these math bomb relative athletic scores, because oftentimes that can translate to these guys being NFL caliber athletes. Chance Campbell, coming out of Mississippi, earned a 9.7 relative athletic score. That is really good. Checked in then at 6'2", 232. His vertical, 39.5. That was graded as elite. His broad jump, more than 10 feet. That too graded as elite. Then the 40-yard dash, 20-yard split, and the 10-yard split, all in the green. He scored elite there. And then he was also awesome in the shuttle. Okay in the 3-cone, but that's the athleticism that I speak of for Chance Campbell. Now, when I scout him, when you go back and watch some of the tape from what he did in college, big, strong, physical linebacker. Sometimes, though, he can be a liability in coverage, and I've said it a couple of times. He can move vertically. That 40-yard dash at that size, that's really solid speed. Laterally, though, he can really struggle. Kind of like a Kelee Ringo, right? Kelee can run a sub 4.4, but can he throttle down and can he move side to side? Campbell struggles with that in addition to lacking range. So he's not really a rangy linebacker. But what he does do well is locate the ball well playing against the run. I think he's more of a special teams guy. I don't think he's going to make the 53, but it is telling that the Eagles inside linebackers coach, Bobby King, coached him with the Tennessee Titans, clearly had a say in bringing him in to Philadelphia. As for some Philadelphia Eagles injury news on this Wednesday, August 20th, Johnny Wilson got carted off at Eagles training camp yesterday. Andrew Mukuba left training camp practice yesterday after grabbing his hamstring. We're not sure the severity of these injuries and how long these players are going to be out. But on the Eagles injury report, Philadelphia listing Johnny Wilson with an ankle and a knee injury, while Andrew Mukuba has a hamstring issue, and we knew that that was the case because he grabbed it, tried to continue on in practice, and then he couldn't continue forward. This is really unfortunate timing for both of these young players with where we are this close to the start of the regular season, combined with these players making strides in their development. And I looked at them both obviously is locks to make the 53-man roster. We knew that Drew Mukuba was going to be on the 53, but he was closing in on potentially being the starter alongside Reed Blankenship week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. Now that he injured his hamstring, how long is he going to be out? And does that hurt his acclimation process and his maturation process in trying to lock down that starting job? And then for Johnny Wilson, he was more on the roster bubble going into the first preseason game, but then against Cincinnati, 3 catches for 73 yards, and he really popped, and you saw a lot of strides in his development. And so these are 2 players who you thought going into 2025 could have some solid roles for the Eagles here this season, but with these injuries, how long are they going to be out, and does that impact their snap count, their injury status, and their roster standing? For Johnny Wilson here, at Florida State, size wasn't a problem. He was massive, but he ran sloppy routes. He dropped a lot of passes, looked like Tarzan, played like Jane. Always played small. But in that preseason opener against Cincinnati, he finally played up to his size. 6'6", 227, and with all 3 of his catches, he went up and he got it. This was his first catch. One-on-one with the DB. This is what you call a true 50-50 ball. And Johnny Wilson with that 6'6" frame beyond the outstretched arms and hands of the DB took that football away for a nice play downfield. So glad that Tanner McKee gave him a chance. That's what good quarterbacks do. Johnny Wilson's second catch, very similar situation where he mossed the DB again. Ran a little bit of a slot fade, started inside the number, then faded to the outer third of the football field. Tanner McKee threw it up for him. Knowing that he's 6'6", Johnny Wilson head top went up and got it after he climbed the ladder. And then this might be the most impressive play that he made in that preseason game, and this was his third catch. Tanner McKee throwing with unbelievable timing, touch, anticipation toward the boundary, toward the sideline. This is a back shoulder ball. Good awareness by Johnny Wilson, number 1. Good body control, number 2. And then again, using that big frame to make a play downfield. You see and saw here what the Eagles saw in him for what he could be down the road as a player at that wide receiver spot if he can continue his development. Hopefully he's not out for a long time, because if he can do this, he adds a pretty unique dimension to this Eagles receiving core where he's one of the tallest wide receivers in the game. He gives you a very physically imposing player at that position, and the Eagles really like his ability to be a run blocker. And then for Andrew Mukuba's 75-yard pick 6 against the Cleveland Browns on Saturday. I've talked so much about how Andrew Mukuba is a ball hawk, how he always finds the ball and is always around the ball. He's really good as that center field safety. He had a passer rating when targeted last year at Texas of 12 or 13. It was the lowest among all safeties in college football. He also had 11 passes defended and 5 interceptions. He is also a very smart and cerebral player, and the development leading into the pick 6 certainly backed that up. As you can see, I circled Makuba here. He's playing that deep safety spot. And as the play progresses, you see Makuba's eyes are in a couple of different directions here. And this is the great feel for the game. This is really good instincts. This is really good awareness. So he's locking eyes with this receiver here, but he understands that he has help. And so he's going to let this receiver pass through because he knows that receiver is being defended right here, right? So what Makuba is going to do, he's going to shift his eyes from looking at that receiver to then picking up the crossing route right here. And as we flip to the next photo here, Makuba is able to go step for step with the man who's running the crosser. At the same time, he's also looking at Dylan Gabriel, who's at the 40-yard line, who's rolling to his left. He's a lefty thrower, so he's rolling to his throwing side. What Dylan Gabriel wanted to do on this play, we talked about it during the watch party, take that shot right here. But this player is defended, and Gabriel doesn't want to throw that ball. So Gabriel tries to check it down. And what Makuba is going to do, sift through traffic, navigate through bodies, get off that guy who is running the crosser, and with that 4.4-like speed, he's able to make a beat to the football, pick that pass off, and you know what happened. House call, pick six. That is a mature football play. And I like Sidney Brown as a player, right? He's a downhill thumper. He will run through you, run over you, and run through your face. But he's not the type of player who has that type of feel and those types of instincts at that safety position. And when you combine that skill set with Reed Blankenship, who is also a smart and savvy player making plays on the ball, what did the Eagles do so well last year? Manufacture turnovers on the defensive side of the ball. And so if you miss that with Makuba, it hurts your defense, but also him being out again makes us have questions about his durability. He was banged up at Texas earlier in training camp, missed a few practices because of a shoulder. Now he has the hamstring. So you miss the ball hawking, and you just hope that he's not an injury-prone player because you see the ability, the traits, and the potential that he has. If you want elite Philadelphia Eagles content coming your way on YouTube every single day, make the right decision. Lock us in. Hit that subscribe button. If you like what we just did, news, film breakdown, what we're about to get to, don't forget to join the movement and subscribe today. 345 people away from 125,000 subscribers. We can get there with this video. Still to come here on Eagles Now. We're not done talking about some Eagles injury news. A lot developing on that front, and also a training camp reaction as Jalen Hurts was superb at Eagles practice today. I do want to give a shout out to our friends at PrizePicks for making today's Eagles Now possible. The best daily fantasy sports app in the game. Get $50 when you play $5. Use our link, prizepicks.com/CLNS. It is a no-brainer for you to download the app, create an account, use that code CLNS because that deal is awesome. And preseason football, it's underway. College football, it gets started this weekend, so don't miss any of the action this season on PrizePicks. It's simple to play. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, ladies and gentlemen, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Who are you excited to watch this year? Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown? You think they're going to pop off? Which players do you think could struggle? You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And PrizePicks also always has some great deals. I know it's Dak Prescott, and I know that we want this Eagles defense to confuse and confound him on September 4th for the season opener, but we can all agree he's going to throw for more than a half passing yard, right? That is the special and max discount that PrizePicks is presenting. So let's go with more than a half passing yard for Dak, more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown for Jalen Hurts. Hello, tush push, brotherly shove, and more on 92.5 rushing yards for Saquon Barkley. Number one daily fantasy sports app. Win big up to 2,000 times your money. Join now. Available in 45 states. It's easy and exciting daily fantasy. We'll put that link down below in the show notes and attached to the pinned comment of today's Eagles Now. As I noted, got to touch on some injury news for the Eagles outside of Drew Mukuba and Johnny Wilson. A.J. Brown did not practice today because of a hamstring, nor did Tariq Castro-Fields. Hamstring. Lewis Cine, missing the last couple of practices due to a groin. Landon Dickerson, of course, still out with that knee. Jordan Mailata has a concussion. Tanner McKee didn't practice the last 2 days. Finger issue for him. Drew Mukuba, hamstring officially. Kelee Ringo, not good for him as he's trying to get in the good graces of this Eagles coaching staff and lock down that cornerback 2 job, which right now seems to be in the hands of WR Jackson. Missing practice today because of a quad. DeVonta Smith, he appeared on the injury report as a little bit of a surprise yesterday on Tuesday with a groin. Josh Uche also not practicing because of a groin injury. And then Johnny Wilson listed with that knee and ankle. Injuries are stacking up for Philadelphia. It's a little bit of a concern, especially at that wide receiver position, because right now Philadelphia is without A.J. Brown, who has not practiced now in 19 days, and without DeVonta Smith. The good news, the positive spin, the glass half full approach, as of right now, 15 days away on this Wednesday, August 20th, from the season opener against the Dallas Cowboys, so Philadelphia does have some time on their sides. Which also brings me to this. Due to injuries during training camp, there have not been a lot of constants on the offensive side of the ball for the Eagles going into 2025. One of the big constants, Jalen Hurts. And a sneaky issue that the Eagles have going into this year, they're probably going to play week 1 against the Cowboys, having played with the starters about 100 snaps together. Not a lot of continuity, not a lot of time to work on continuity, synergy, and timing. But Jalen Hurts has had a really good training camp, and since he's been the backbone of this offense, at least Philadelphia can rely on the Super Bowl MVP. And to round out Eagles training camp on this Wednesday, had his best day of camp. He threw 4 touchdowns. He was very accurate, threw with precision, threw some dime balls, but also kept the ball out of harm's way. Did not throw an interception. Threw a beautiful touchdown pass to Anaya Smith when Nolan Smith was right in Hurts' mug. He layered a touchdown to Grant Calcaterra downfield, and then he also had another great touch throw to Darius Cooper. And the UDFA looks to be a lock to make this Eagles roster. So many people like to say, Jalen Hurts is carried. Well, today, he fared very well against this vaunted Eagles defense without Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith. Saquon barely did anything. Either did Dallas Goedert. Good sign that Hurts is looking this good going into the 2025 season. This is also pretty interesting. Dallas Goedert's pick for a player who could break out in 2025, Darius Cooper. High praise from one of the top tight ends in the game. And I would just be shocked if Cooper does not make the initial 53. I don't think he passes through waivers. And that also allows me to segue to this, a training camp reaction here. Our final one, because today was the final day of training camp. Moro Jomo had a phenomenal training camp. And I've said this a few times. He's going to help replace Milton Williams. I think that he could be better. And he beat Kenyon Green in practice today. Got in the face of Kyle McCord. McCord kind of got panicky in the pocket. He threw an interception right to Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. has had a really good training camp. But Jihaad Campbell is just a better player. And that's why he was a first-round pick. That's why Trotter was a fifth-round pick. But Axeman Jr. can be a very serviceable, relied-upon backup inside linebacker. The Eagles have some of the most depth that they've had at the linebacker position in decades. Not even kidding, because even Smile Mondon is a solid player who the Eagles drafted back in April. And speaking of Darius Cooper, he is getting real wide receiver 3 buzz. Without A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, he's been getting a lot of run with the ones. Even when DeVonta Smith was practicing during that open practice 2 Sundays ago, Cooper was getting run with the ones. He's been getting run with first-team special teams units, both on coverage units and on return units. And Jahan Dotson has had a pretty good training camp. He's looked pretty good. But Darius Cooper has looked better. He caught a great pass from Jalen Hurts. Hurts went up to him, dapped him up, had a big smile on his face. Hurts and Cooper were spending some time with one another after training camp yesterday, just working on some nuances. Darius Cooper is legit. He's a real find for Philadelphia, a hidden gem at a Tarleton State. And that's pretty important too, because when you think about this Eagles offense, right? 4 of the 5 starters along the offensive line are locked up on contract extensions. Saquon Barkley got paid. Jalen Hurts is making more than $50 million per year. A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith got paid. And so if you have a cost-controlled, very affordable, and cheap young wide receiver for the foreseeable future, who next year could be wide receiver 3, he could be wide receiver 3 this year, that just helps your team-building strategy from a fiscal standpoint. As for Jihaad Campbell, he had a sack in 11 on 11s. He has some real pass-rushing chops, and he started alongside Zach Bond in team drills at inside linebacker. It's getting to a point where now I wouldn't be surprised if Jihaad Campbell starts at off-ball linebacker over Jeremiah Trotter Jr., with Nakobe Dean hurt, week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. Let's do a real one roll call. If you enjoyed the show, give me a real one down in the comment section. I love all of you. Thanks for tuning in.